is gone and hope is sure. Christ is mine forevermore.
And I would, under the category of ministry, but I'd like actually, Carol, for you to kick this off. This is submitted by someone here. Should we be friends with members we shepherd in our congregation?
Good question.
How come I get this question, Sam?
Because I knew you would ask that question.
It's because I don't have a doctorate. Let's just start with that. So I got stuck with this job. Just to piggyback on previous answers, I think entering the pastorate, being called to become a full-time pastor missionary, I think very similar to academics as well. There's a lot of highs and lows, just to piggyback on that. And I think you should never, ever become a pastor unless you really, really at least have some clarity or confidence that God wired and called you, and He really wants you to do this for the rest of your life. And I know Julie's joked about it, but yeah, I think you've got to kind of like people. Like, I mean, you know, pastoring is just such an enormously tricky, nuanced, there's just no textbooks for it. Like, most of the time, I feel exactly like James. We have no idea what we're doing. I was joking the first night with Owen. I said, I cannot believe 30 years later, back then we knew for sure we had no idea what we're doing. Now we're like leading a forum for other pastors who actually think we know what we're doing. Like nothing's changed. 30 years later, I think we just look like we know what we're doing. All right, but back to the question.
And I think the question I directed to you is because of this quote. What if making friends is the main business of Christianity?
Yeah. So, I cannot isolate one or two factors. My first full-time pastor was at Christ Central Presbyterian Church in Virginia. I'm indebted to that church. That's where I cut my teeth. That's where Pastor Owen and they're just just booming to the glory of God. Worked with Henry Coe and Mrs. Coe back then. What was going on with me personally, I do not think I was as open. There was a lot of barriers of pride, insecurity. I was my early 30s, so when you first start ministry, looking back, I can so clearly see in my own heart, I was just trying to prove myself. So if that mechanism was going on in my heart, I was trying to prove myself. It is actually very difficult to be vulnerable and confessing sin and needing people and trying to form community. In addition to that I grew up in California, but East Coast was not my home. I did not have lifelong friends. And I joked about it last night. The older you get, your EQ and your energy level and your skill level to make new friends just diminishes drastically. So I think you got to start young. So I do not think I had a really healthy, close-knit network of friends. I think a lot of emotional outlets that I think human beings need, I did not experience like I think I should have. Now, coming back to California, I grew up here, this is home. That was actually kind of a culture shock being in the East Coast for 10 years. It was actually weird coming back. But here, I have this rich, incredible network of old friends. And I think in the last 12 years, it has been such a lifeline. So I have 2 or 3 groups of friends. One is pastors outside of my church, outside of the local church. We get together once a month or once every month, and there is no agenda, no business involved. This is to really share a lot of time. And I just can't describe to you or estimate what kind of emotional, psychological, human therapy and relief and comfort and perspective gaining and wisdom learning and just the kind of things that I feel when we get to do that. So that's one group of friends. The church back here in California, I happen to have several friends who are back from college. So I have no idea how they continue to come to the church that I lead. They are really good friends, and they are a few that I can actually confide in and just, quote unquote, just be totally unfiltered myself. We just added to our elders, so we have key elders session. I think the question is trying to point at, trying to draw boundaries, be wise about what kind of friendship should you have with leaders of your church. Okay? So I'm going to try to give you an evasive answer which doesn't really answer the question. I'm just going to take two sides of this question. I really think God exercises a lot of judgment and wisdom. I think it depends on the maturity of that leader. Can that person keep secrets? Can that person understand that you as a pastor are emoting and venting usually about something or about someone at the church? Right? Like you're telling another leader or elder of a grief or a hurt or something you're processing in the church. It has to do with someone in your church. You're going to have to make that judgment call. I don't think you should do it all the time. Neither am I saying you should not do it at all. I think it really depends on the person and your read. Pastoring is you got to read people. If you're not able to read people, I think a lot of wisdom is going to be thrown off. So that's one short answer.
I'm glad you kind of specified leadership, because I think that's probably what's implied here. Yeah. Anybody else want to make a quick comment?
As a ruling elder, it's an interesting flip side. What is the relationship that a typical member wants with a pastor? And defining the relationship is going to be important. And I think I have several friends who have experienced and been burned by this. They got close, they hang out, they vacation together and all those sorts of things, and it seems like we're really, really close friends. And then you confide in something and they're disappointed because, oh, I thought I was sharing as a pastor, I thought I was sharing as a friend, but you heard it as a pastor. And vice versa. And so when you're burned once, you're like, I'm never talking to another person in my church again. And then how do you recover from that? And I think it goes both ways. The ruling elder or a member needs to recognize the very, very delicate role that you have in this friendship. Now, I confess that some of my closest friends were people that I did ministry with. But, do you vacation together? There's got to be that intentionality. And put it in the center and have that conversation. Because eyes wide open, I think the danger is to go in and say, I had no idea that if we hung out together and did all these things and vacationed and exchanged money and other things that normal friends might do, it actually hurt the relationship. And it hurt the ministry. Eyes wide open, I think that's what I want to know.
Now, just to piggyback on that a little bit further, when I say maturity of a person, you're going to have to try to measure, can that person handle that his or her pastor feels or thinks or says those things?
Right.
That's the bottom line. Can that person not judge and criticize and be so devastated? Oh, I thought you were supposed to be like Jesus. Yeah. Like, what's wrong with you? And they secretly move away, not just hurting your relationship, but it actually affects their worship.
Yeah.
It affects whether they can submit or trust you if they go to your church.
Yeah.
Rejoice now, oh my soul, for His love is my reward. Fear is gone and hope is sure.